Yeah.
Hello, everybody. During this time of crisis, we're trying to shoot a short video real quick of a cold lesson so we have something to watch at home. To all of our family members, we miss you and we love you and we hope everybody's safe. We're going to start with a prayer. Lord, thank you for your gifts of your Son and your love and your forgiveness. We know that you're still in charge even though we're scared and worried right now and we have crisis going on all around us. Let us just keep our eyes on you. Thank you for Cole being here to give us a lesson so we have a chance to study your word. Please watch over all of our sick and all of our needy and keep them safe. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. Now, here from an extensive tour of Colorado, Cole Tuck.
Thank you for the introduction. I feel like I'm going into like a fight right now, like a cage match. I'm glad you guys are watching. Just wanted to do this lesson. We were supposed to, have our first Sunday night multi-generational assembly the other day where I was going to preach, so this is just a sermon from that. I really appreciate you guys watching and still caring about this kind of stuff, even though you don't have to and there's no one else watching. So I really appreciate that. Be careful of your thoughts, for your thoughts become your words. Be careful of your words, for your words become your actions. Be careful of your actions, for your actions become your habits. Be careful of your habits, for your habits become your character. Be careful of your character, for your character becomes your destiny. Be careful of your thoughts, for your thoughts become your destiny. I always saw those words growing up a lot because they were on the wall of my grandma's bathroom, of all places. And if you can't find wisdom on the wall of your grandma's bathroom, I'm not sure where you can. I know when I'm looking for sermon material, first place I want to check is my grandma's bathroom. Like, what do you have on the wall in there? But I loved that poem growing up. I say that. At first, I didn't know what it meant, and I thought it was weird, so I just read it a lot, trying to figure it out. But as I got older, I really, really liked the poem because it showed the progression from something that I viewed as very small, like a thought, something I'm just thinking. It showed the progression from that to something huge, like my character or my destiny. And I never really connected the two. I never really connected something small at the origins, just what's running through my brain or running through my heart, to something big like my destiny and the type of person I am. So I really liked that it showed, the source of who I was, the source of all the problems that I had, the source of all the decisions I make. Because I feel like so often what we do is we look at the symptoms of our problems, that we look at kind of the end results of what we're going through, and we don't really look at the source of what's going on. For example, I had, when we first got our new bed, we got new pillows and everything. Starting out, I started getting a lot of headaches, and it was like 3 or 4 days straight, I would get a really, really bad headache every day. And I would just take ibuprofen, or I would take Advil or something, some kind of medicine, try to take a hot shower, rub my head, trying to make the headache go away. But every day it kept coming back. I didn't tell Julie about this. Of course, if I had told Julie on day one, she could have fixed it right away. But eventually I told Julie about it, I just keep getting these headaches. And she said, well, it's probably the pillow you're using. And I was using a bigger pillow that was lifting my head up, and it was causing these headaches. Now, I could have just kept treating the symptoms and the symptoms and the symptoms forever, but it never would have gotten rid of the source problem. So today, I want to talk to you guys kind of about the sources of our problems, the sources of the decisions we make and the things we do. Because if we focus on the symptoms, for example, if we focus on gossip or we focus on, stealing or any of these things we're struggling with, it doesn't fix the core issues. So if you would, turn with me to Proverbs chapter 4, and we're going to look at 3 sources that Solomon gives us that are really at the heart of the decisions we make, that are at the heart of the types of people that we are. We're going to look at those 3 things. Proverbs chapter 4, and if you're having trouble finding Proverbs, open your Bible up to the middle. You're going to find a big book of Psalms somewhere in there, and it's the book right after that. So the book right after that big book of Psalms. And we're in chapter 4, verses 23 through 27. Begin with me in verse 23. Watch over your heart with all diligence, or guard your heart with all diligence, for from it flow the springs of life. So the first area that we're going to look at that we're supposed to take care of because it's a source is our hearts. Solomon, in his wisdom that he's sharing with all of us in this book, is saying to guard your heart with all diligence. And he gives us the reason. Because from it flows all the springs of life. When we look at this phrase, all the springs of life, that means like every aspect of life, everything that you do in life flows out from your heart. In Mark chapter 7, verses 20 through 23, Mark chapter 7, verses 20 through 23, Jesus is talking about what defiles a man. And he says that out of the hearts of men come all of these things. Out of the hearts of men come slander. Out of the hearts of men come murder. Out of the hearts of men come thefts and all these different things. It doesn't just happen automatically someday. It doesn't just happen by chance or by random, by something just happening. It's inside of your heart and it spills out. And that's why Solomon is telling us that we have to guard our hearts and protect our hearts, because from it flows all of these things. All of these things that we do come out of our heart. They don't just randomly happen. We don't just wake up one day and decide to start treating people really poorly. We don't just wake up one day and decide to start stealing things. We don't just wake up one day and start randomly deciding to do these things. They come out of our hearts. They escape from our hearts into our actions. So if we want to stop all of those things, if we want to fix the type of person we are, if we want to fix our decision making, how we treat people, we don't need to focus on those symptoms. We have to focus on the source. And the source is the heart. And I love the way Solomon phrases this. He says to guard your heart. And we guard things all the time. We guard things with value. If you think about maybe your wife or your kids or something like that, if there's someone that's acting really shady or they're acting really weird around your kids or your wife or someone, you typically pull them close to you, right? Like, I want to keep them close to me. I want to protect them. I want to keep them safe because you value them and you want to protect them. You see them as something that needs to be protected, so you guard them. Or if you think about maybe your most valuable asset or your most valuable item, it's probably not sitting out in your driveway for anybody walking by to just grab or look at or touch or whatever, right? It's probably hidden away, tucked in a corner of the house somewhere, maybe even in a safe, because you're protecting it because you value it. And how much more valuable is your heart than almost any other thing? Because everything in life flows out from your heart. Everything in life that is valuable comes out of your heart. So we have to take effort and protect our hearts. Now, the natural question is, how do you guard your heart? How do you protect your heart? Because I understand that with my kids or my wife or my items, I guard those things physically. But how do I guard something that I can't even see? How do I guard my center of thinking? Like, we talk about the heart, we're not talking about the organ that pumps blood or anything like that. Like, we're talking about our center of thinking. How do I protect and how do I guard something like that? And the first thing you need to do is to treasure the right things within your heart. In Matthew chapter 6, verses 20 through 21, Jesus says that where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. He's telling his followers that they need to store up for themselves treasure in heaven, not on earth. Because where you treasure, or the things that you treasure, your heart is going to be focused on those things. Your heart is going to be set on those things. So if I treasure my wife, or if I treasure God, or if I treasure my job, it's going to be reflected in my actions because my heart is there in those things. Now, if I don't treasure something, my actions are also going to reflect that. So we have to treasure the right things. And then if you look at the book of Philippians, Paul talks a lot about setting your mind or setting your heart on the right things. In Philippians 3, verses 18 and 19, he's talking about this group of people who have set themselves against God. This group of people who have set themselves as enemies of the cross of Christ. And this didn't just happen one day, right? They didn't just wake up one day, they had been faithful Christians their whole life, and all of a sudden, I am now an enemy of the cross of Christ, right? No, Paul says that they set their minds on earthly things. That they set their hearts on earthly things. And as a result, they did earthly things until they got to the point where they were fully enemies of the cross of Christ. And then he tells us, the faithful followers, people that are trying to please God, don't be like those people who set their mind, who set their hearts on earthly things. You need to protect your heart by dwelling on the right things. And then in Philippians chapter 4, verses 8 through 9, he gives us this great list of things. Whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, that we have to set our minds or set our hearts upon. Because if we set our mind on those great things, we're going to be doing those great things, and we're going to be those type of people. If you set your mind on earthly things, you're going to do earthly things. But if you set your mind on truth, you're going to be a very truthful person. If you set your heart on what is pure, you're going to be a very pure person. And the list goes on and on. So if you want to be a good husband, if you want to be a good father, if you want to be a good wife, daughter, son, co-worker, boss, any of those things, the answer is not just starting with the actions. The answer is going back to the source and protecting your heart. Because every good husband or every good wife has a good heart. And every bad husband or every bad wife has a bad heart. And that's why we have to guard the source and protect it. The second area that we're supposed to guard is in verse 24. Solomon says to put away from you a deceitful mouth and put devious speech far away from you. So the second area that we need to guard, we guard our heart, and then we guard our mouths. We guard our speech. And I love the way Solomon words this. He says to put away from you a deceitful mouth. One version that I liked said to cast away from you a deceitful mouth or a lying mouth. To put this far away from you. I was trying to think of some examples of things that we put far away from us. You know, the things that we try to keep from us. I didn't have to think very far, or think for very long, because right now, what's the thing that our society is practicing? Like right now, what do we call it? Social distancing, right? So we're saying we need to keep these people far away from us, right? I don't want to be close to anyone because of this coronavirus. I need to keep everybody far away to protect myself, to protect them, all that stuff. So we're putting people far away from us. You know, that's why we can't have church services right now and everything, is because of this social distancing that's going on. When someone's sick, even before all this was going on, nobody wanted to be around them. They said, put them in the corner, or please stay home, don't come to this event, stay away, because we recognize that that's dangerous for us, that that's something that we don't want near us because we don't want to be hurt. And Solomon talks in the same way that we talk about that, about a deceitful mouth and about devious speech. Back in Colorado, we have a tarantula problem. And I don't know what the definition of a tarantula problem is, but I think there's one tarantula, you've got a tarantula problem, because tarantulas are gross and disgusting. But you'll see them all over the place. You'll be driving down the highway, and you'll see something run across the road, and you're like, what was that? And my parents told me, it's a tarantula. I didn't believe them. They stopped the car, got out, showed me there's spiders. There's spiders running across the road. It's disgusting, it's gross, it's awful. And we were at a church function one time out at the lake where we were just grilling steaks and stuff. And this kid picks up a spider, one of these tarantulas, and is showing it to everyone. And everybody's having a good time, except me and some other reasonable people. But they're all playing with the spider, let it crawl all over them. And I remember this little girl going to her dad, and she's chasing him around with the spider, trying to get him to play with it. And then when she found out he was afraid of it, she really started having fun, because she's chasing around. He's screaming, he's knocking over chairs, trying to keep her from getting to him with this spider. And he's yelling, get that away from me, because he was so scared of this spider, which I think is a perfectly reasonable response. You know, I get it. But that kind of mentality, that I don't want that anywhere near me, get it as far away from me as possible, is the kind of mentality that Solomon wants us to have with corrupt speech, with devious speech, with deceitful speech. Something that we don't even want anywhere near us. We don't want it close to us at all. We want to keep that away from us. We don't want it anywhere near us. And we might be asking, how is this a source, though? How does this affect the rest of our other actions? How does this affect all of our decisions in life? Well, turn with me, if you will, to James chapter 3, verses 2 through 12, and you'll see the importance of our speech. James is a great book, and in James chapter 3, it's in your New Testament, right after the book of Hebrews. But James chapter 3 and verses 2 through 12, I'm going to start reading in verse 2. For we all stumble in many ways. If anyone does not stumble in what he says, he is a perfect man, able to bridle the whole body as well. So James says that if you can control the things you say, if you can control your tongue, if you can control your words, you can control your body. It's kind of like in the poem that said, be careful of your words, for your words become your actions. Be careful of these things because it flows out into the rest of your body. It flows out into everything else. James uses the example in verse 3 of horses. He says, now if we put the bits into the horse's mouth so that they will obey us, we direct their entire body as well. So he's saying you've got this big old horse that's controlled by this little bitty bit. And he's saying that look at these great ships in verse 4, these big ships. They're so great and they're driven by such strong winds, and yet they're still controlled by a very small rudder wherever the inclination of the pilot desires. So also the tongue is a small part of the body, and yet it boasts of great things. So we think of the tongue as just a small thing. We think of the words we say as not very powerful, all of those things. We may even use statements like, well, I said that, but I would never do it. Or even with thinking, I thought that, I would probably never do it. Or I was just messing around when I said that. It's not anything I would ever actually do. But James says if you can control that, if you never let those things get to your tongue, they'll never get to your hands. If you never let your mouth speak it, it will never get to your body. So that's why we have to guard our tongue, because it's the source of everything else that we do too. So you might ask, how do we guard this stuff? One of the things I love about the Bible is it doesn't just tell us not to do something. It doesn't just say, don't do this and leave it at that. It doesn't just say, stop doing that and leave it there. It tells us, don't do this, but do this instead, right? Don't do this. Here's a better way to do this. So in the example of this, he says, don't let this deceitful mouth be close to you. Don't let this devious speech come from you. Don't do that. But instead, build people up with your words and all that stuff. So we have to dedicate our mouths to building people up with our words and all of those things. I love in Job chapter 31, verse 1. Job says, I have made a covenant with my eyes. How can I then look on a virgin? Job made a covenant, which a covenant is like an agreement or a contract, something like that. He made an agreement with his eyes, saying that you will not look at this. You will not see this. And it might sound silly to say, okay, this body part, I'm going to tell it, I've got an agreement with you. But what if we did that with our mouths, where I said, my mouth is only going to be used as an instrument for good. My mouth is never going to be tearing people down. The only time my mouth can talk is when it's talking and it's building people up and it's encouraging people. If I'm tearing people down, I'm not going to be talking. And Job made this agreement with his eyes, and I would encourage all of us to make this agreement with your mouth. That devious speech, a deceitful mouth, it's never going to come out of you. These words are never going to come out of you. When you open, you are opening for good. So make a covenant with your mouth. And then, so we had guard your heart, guard your mouth, and then last, in verse 25, guard your eyes. Solomon says, let your eyes look directly ahead, and let your gaze be fixed straight in front of you. And when Solomon talks about this, he's obviously not talking about your physical eyes. He's not just saying the key to being a good Christian is just to keep your head focused straight. That's obviously not what he's saying. He's talking about your mindset and the things that you focus on and the things that you prioritize. And the eyes are a really good way to illustrate that point. You walk where your eyes are looking. I remember when I was first learning how to drive, I almost got in so many wrecks because when you turn, you're driving, and then you look at something, your hands start going that way. Especially when you're first learning how to drive. It's like where your eyes go, your body goes. If I look this way, I'm turning the car this way. I didn't mean to. I didn't realize I was doing it. But my whole body started moving the direction that my eyes were going. And that's how life is. The things that you prioritize, the things that you're focused on, whether you mean it or not, are going to be the direction that you move in. The things that you are gazing upon, the things that you are intent upon, that's where your body is going to go. That's where your life and the direction of your life is going to go. So that's why Solomon says, let your eyes be fixed straight ahead, and let your gaze be fixed straight in front of you. Watch the path of your feet, and all your ways will be established. Don't turn to the right or to the left. Turn your foot from evil. If you focus on the goal that's set before you, if you focus on what's important, you don't have to worry about going in a different direction. When we start getting in trouble is when we're not focused on the goal, when we're not focused on what we're supposed to be focused upon. One of my favorite verses is in Hebrews chapter 12, verses 1 and 2. And Hebrews is in your New Testament right before the book James that we read from earlier. But Hebrews chapter 12, verses 1 and 2 says this, therefore, since we have so great a cloud of witnesses surrounding us, let us also lay aside every encumbrance and the sin which so easily tangles us, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us. So he's saying we want to lay aside all of these sins and these encumbrances, these things that hold us down, We want to run the race that's set before us. And the way we do that is in verse 2. Fixing our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of the faith. If you want to run with endurance and you want to get through this race and you want to stay on the path that you're supposed to stay on, you have to fix your eyes on Jesus. And that's why Solomon's telling us we have to guard our heart, we have to guard our speech, and we have to guard our eyes. Because if you focus on those three things and you can control those three things, everything else in life is going to take care of itself. The words that you say, if you're focused on keeping deceitful speech from you, they're going to take care of themselves. If you're focused on protecting your heart and protecting your words and protecting your eyes in this, this figurative sense, you're going to be a good husband, you're going to be a good wife, you're going to be a good fill in the blank with whatever you want to be. So you have to guard these sources, though, because it doesn't matter how many of the symptoms you treat. It doesn't matter how many of these specific character things that you're dealing with. Stopping your gossiping problem is not going to fix your heart problem, right? Stopping your lying problem is not going to fix everything else in life. It's just one of the symptoms of what's going on inside and what's going on with your heart. It's kind of like, I think it was the Three Stooges a while back. They're all in the boat, and the boat's sinking, and they have a bucket, and they're just trying to, get all the water out of the boat. And the boat's still filling up with water, and the boat's still sinking, and they're all getting wet. Well, if they would focus on just stopping where the source is, stop the leaks, stop everything else, then the boat's going to stop sinking. But as long as we're just trying to empty ourselves of these bad habits and empty ourselves of all these things we don't like, the water's still coming in because the heart, the source, is still bad. So we have to go to the source of the problem and fix those things by guarding our hearts, guarding our mouths, and guarding our eyes. This life isn't meant to push us closer to God, right? These things aren't. The reason we have to guard these things is because they're under attack. Life is always going to give you other things to look at. Life is always going to give you things that you want to say. Life is always going to be coming after your heart. Right now, when we're talking about fixing our eyes and everything, what is all of the world talking about right now that we're all focused on? COVID-19, coronavirus, all that stuff. That's what we're focused upon, and we're fixing our eyes on that. And it can be easy to get distracted from what our true purpose is. And it can be easy to get distracted by all the death rates, the infection rates, and I've got to know this, and I've got to know that, and they're shutting this down, and I've got to focus on that. It's easy to get overwhelmed and focused on those things and kind of lose track of what we're supposed to be doing. And it's easy to forget about the words we're saying and not really pay attention to those things. And it's easy to forget about the condition of our hearts and just focus on those things. But we should follow Solomon's words and focus on the core of these things. And we'll be proud of the results that come out because of that. All right. That's all I've got. I'm not going to give an invitation because there's no one. Everyone here, I think, is good. There's no one here to invite up to be baptized. So
they can still be invited next week. They can call the office.
Yeah, okay. So I guess we will do that. If you're watching this and you have any questions about the Bible, you're saying, hey, I don't even know if I am a Christian. I don't really know when that happened. I don't know if I'm in a right relationship with God, or maybe you just need help and maybe the coronavirus is hitting you hard and you don't know what to do. Maybe you just need someone to pray with you or study with you. Call the office, Northridge Church of Christ, or call me, 719-989-8645, and somebody's going to talk to you. I'll probably talk to you. So